Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the inimitable. What are you doing?
I'm doing a countdown. You just went. Doesn't matter. You messed up inimitable, so you're good.
All right. Ready? 3. Welcome back to the Inimitable Impact Podcast. We have a special guest today. Jamie Yuccas from CBS National News is on the show today. But first, let me bring in the co-host, Kate Lavelle. How you doing?
I'm doing good. This is a special weekend.
What weekend is it?
This is 4th of July weekend. And here's the really cool thing that this worked out. We may have put some planning into this, but Jamie's impact moment actually happened when she was a teenager over the 4th of July weekend. And we just thought this was going to be a great time to drop this and put it out there.
It's a really great show. Great interview. Kate, what else has been new with you? What's been going on lately?
Nothing. Been real busy with the Stick Together workshops and kind of in between my trips right now. Just got back from Boston and Nashville and gearing up to go to El Paso 2 times actually in the next couple of weeks. So got a few trips planned for that. And, got a hurricane headed out our way. So we're going to have an impact moment of our own hitting my patio. We'll see how flooded that gets. That's about it. What we're talking about today?
What are we talking about today?
Mental health. So
Wow.
We are digging into a really big topic, really relevant right now. We put out some of the clips already, and I think they really resonated with people. But Jamie really talks about, we get driven towards success. We put our head down and we grind and we keep going and we run into obstacles. We run into things that are difficult. And instead of stopping and dealing with them, we tend to kind of stuff them down and keep ourselves busy. And when we do that, we forget to stop and look up and see, are we on the right path? Is this what we want to do? Do I need to deal with some things that, I haven't looked at before? And that was a wake-up call for her. So she gets really deep into that. And it's a great episode. So I'm excited to get into it.
What are we waiting for? Let's just get into it and see what she has to say.
In 3, 2, 1, impact.
Okay, welcome back to Inimitable Impact Podcast. We've got Jamie Yuccas on with us, and we're going to be talking about some actually really cool stuff today, very different than some of the other things that we've been talking about. And we've talked about sports, and we've talked about teams and businesses and bringing people together. And today we're going to go in kind of a little bit of a different direction. And I think this is going to be something that everybody really wants to pay attention to. So excited to dig in. And Trent's over in Minnesota, right? Minneapolis.
Yep.
All right. Jamie, you were are you from Minnesota?
I grew up in Maple Grove, Minnesota.
Oh my gosh. I guess this is part of your job, but I don't hear your accent, and I'm sure.
Oh yeah, it's there. It's there, Kate. I have to see a speech coach once a month. Jenny Steck.
That is great. So I was there for my first 6 months that I was there. I went to, so I'm a lacrosse coach because I'm originally from Annapolis. So I went to a lacrosse tournament back home, and I literally was gone 6 months. And I talked to someone who didn't know me, and they said, "Oh, where are you from?" And I was like, "Well, I'm from here." And they said, "No, where are you from right now?" And I said, "Well, I live in Minnesota." Like, "Yeah, we could hear the accent." And I was like, "It's only been 6 months." I mean, I was terrified. So that O is, it
oh
just
yeah,
grabs on.
Boat, bag. I've got lots of them. The other day I actually was shooting something for Nickelodeon, and what was the word? It was create, but I kept saying crate, and they were like, stop, cut. What are you trying to say? I had to go create.
Yeah, I love that. And when I get tired, it starts to come out. And I was there from 2007 until November. So I had plenty of time. My kids picked it up because they grew up there. So yeah, definitely had that. And then these, by the way, in the backgrounds are our cabins. Trent, how do you say that?
Cabins.
Yeah, yes, I can't. That one I didn't pick up because I didn't have a cabin. But we designed our cabins over here. So tell us a little bit about what you did when you were in Minnesota. And I know you're not in Minnesota anymore. So how did you escape Minnesota?
Man,
Maybe someone needs to know.
I'll try to give you the Cliff Notes version, but
Okay.
I grew up in Maple Grove, Minnesota. I had a grandfather who had a lake home, a cabin in northern Minnesota on Leech Lake near Walker. And my brother and I would go up there in the summertime, and my grandfather was really into news, current events, whether it was television, newspaper, you name it. And so every Sunday we'd watch 60 Minutes. During the week, my brother and I would be paid $2 if we could pass his current events quiz after reading the newspaper. Ooh. So he would always go beyond the headline and make sure that we were reading. So he'd find some obscure, piece within it. And if we could pass his test, we made $2.
Do you see Trent's face right now? Trent is like super dad. And I literally just saw him go, I know how I can do this. I'm like, you did, didn't you?
Taking notes.
But it created this, I just was so curious. I wanted to know more. I wanted to know more about the world. I wanted to know about faraway places and people and how people were connected. And it really turned into what I wanted to do in life. And so once when I was a kid, I made my cousins write for the Loon Lagoon is what I called it. I created a newspaper, typed it on a typewriter. Yes. And so my cousins would go get stories from family members and we'd create this little newspaper. By the time I got to high school, I was lucky enough at Maple Grove Senior High. I had this teacher, Terry Caruso, who started a journalism program. I was only the second graduating class out of Maple Grove, and she was an English teacher and wanted to start a journalism class. And a bunch of us were interested in it and did. And we had the Harbinger newspaper. And so I thought I was going to be a newspaper reporter.
Yeah.
I go to the University
of Minnesota. What's a newspaper?
Well, no, that's exactly right.
So good thing you didn't go that way.
Well, so Ken Stone, my professor at the University of Minnesota, I'm a writer for the Minnesota Daily. And he says, Jamie, we don't know where newspapers are going to be in 10, 15 years. This is 2000, 2001. You need to take a television internship. And I went kicking and screaming, thinking, those TV people are stupid. They're just pretty. Like, I don't want to be on television. I want to be I want to be smart. I want to be whatever. And so I went, and actually the first day I took a weather internship to get myself in the door. The first day of my internship was 9/11.
Oh my God.
And I went, okay, I see you have to put pictures to words. These people are very smart. They have to be articulate. They have to keep it together. Yeah. And that was the moment that drove me then toward broadcast journalism. And Ken Stone and I are still friends to this day. And we run, I participate volunteer for the Student Television Network. So trying to keep it going to the next generations of kids that are interested in television and television.
Wow. That's so cool. You know what? You're the first person that I've ever met, and I'm not in journalism, but I'm a writer, but I, as a kid, used to make newsletters of my family events, and it had several pages, and I typed it on a typewriter, and I would staple them together, and I have a couple, and my mom actually did it when she was a kid, and I found one of her old ones, and that's how I got the idea. So, and my sister was a journalism major, so it's kind of funny. I've never ever met anyone that's done it. Trent, did you also create?
Can't say that I have done that.
You're gonna have to.
Nope.
So you were in Minnesota, and how did this grow into where you are now? Because now you're national, right?
So I work for the CBS network. So what's interesting is I took that television internship at WCCO Minneapolis, which is a CBS owned and operated station. My first job out of college was in Rochester, Minnesota at an NBC Fox affiliate. So I shot, I wrote, I edited, I anchored the weekends. I did a little bit of everything. Wow. I then get hired about 18 months later in Fort Myers, Florida. I thought I was only going to be there about 2 years. The market crashes, the housing market crashes. I owned a house very young, thinking, I'm doing really well.
Right?
Right.
Pat yourself on the back.
Exactly. So I ended up staying there for 6 years. And then I got a call from Mike Caputa, who's the news director at WCCO. He had been working on the assignment desk at WCCO when I was an intern. He had worked his way up to news director, and I had been working in Florida for a long time. He called me and said, what if you came back and worked for me? And I will never forget, it was twin spring training. And I had a house full of Minnesotans talking about how horrible the winter had been. And I was like, Mike, why do I want to leave Florida to come work for you? Why? And he was like, trust me, just come in for the interview. So I went in for the interview, and he knew that I had always wanted to work for the network. And he said, what if I promised you that if you take this job, you'll be able to, if there are national stories that come through Minneapolis, I will pitch you. You have to prove yourself. It's not, automatic, but you'll at least get the opportunity to present yourself to the network. So that happened my second week on the job at WCCO. I was sent to Minot, North Dakota to cover the flooding, the Mouse River flooding. And it was the worst flooding there in 100 and some years. And I got on CBS This Morning and the CBS Evening News my second week on the job at WCCO.
Oh my God. Do you kind of feel like maybe, I mean, every single thing that led you to where you are was like this off chance? I mean, I feel like you could have said, I want to be a dog groomer, and you would have walked in to wash a dog and you would have left and they'd be like, oh, I'm a news anchor now. I don't know how this happened.
I feel like, I do a lot of talking about you do have to realize, like, wanted to get out of Florida so badly. And when I was there 2 years, 3 years, I was beating myself up going, why can't I get a job somewhere else? I interviewed a lot of places, and I look back, and if I hadn't stayed there, who knows if I would have made it to where I am now. So I think I always tell younger people, don't be in such a rush, really pay attention, listen to your gut, don't beat yourself up, right? Like, everything does seem to happen the way it's supposed to. And so you just kind of have to, I used to have mentors say, enjoy the ride, Jamie, enjoy the ride, you'll get there. And I never believed him. I'm the one banging on the door, like, let me in.
That's me. That's
then
Trent.
finally
chill out.
when you finally just go, you know what, fine, whatever's supposed to happen happens, then usually that's when it happens.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like, just looking back at that, do you now kind of look at closed doors a little differently? Like, okay,
oh yeah,
it might be closing for a reason.
Yep. Stop forcing things.
Yeah. That's really cool. I mean, Trent, I know that's your mindset. Trent's always telling me that, like just relax and
things will happen when they need to happen. That's how I look at life. It's just let it go, and when it happens, it'll happen.
Yeah.
So I was there. I didn't get a network job 2 weeks into being at WCCO. I was then the morning anchor at WCCO. They would call every time there was a major snowstorm or Somali terrorism.
So like every Wednesday.
Yeah, pretty much. When a lot of Somali kids were being recruited to Al Shabaab, I remember we did some pieces. And it just, over the years, they just kept using me off and on. And finally, I got a call saying, would you want to move to New York? And I went, and I worked for initially NewsPath, which is the CBS network way of you doing national pieces for all the local CBS stations. And then eventually I made my way onto the network of doing CBS This Morning, CBS Evening. And I was in New York a couple of years, and I had a lot of personal stuff happen, which we'll probably dive into, but I got divorced. My stepdad died, my aunt died, my grandma died, all within 90 days. That was all in 2016.
Wow.
And my mom was living in Arizona then at the time, and she felt very far away. And Ben Tracy, who's also a Minnesotan, who works at CBS, who's a very good friend of mine, we call each other the Minnesota Twins. He called me and said, I know what your family's going through. I know your mom's in Arizona. I'm secret here. I'm leaving. I'm taking the job in China. You should take my job in California.
Wow.
I had been to LA once. I didn't know if I even really liked it. But it would get me closer to my mom. I didn't really have anything keeping me in New York at that point, except the job. So if I could do the job from out here, it was kind of one of those moments too, where I went, well, universe, okay, I'm listening. I think I'm going to LA. And Ben and I went to management, and they said, oh my gosh, this is perfect. Yes, we'd love to have you out there. And it ended up being the best decision ever. So here I am in LA now, and I get to do everything from today I interviewed Danny Trejo, talk about redemption and, amazing. But it's, then I cover wildfires. I get like a little bit of everything being out here. So it's been a great, fun ride for sure.
I feel like you probably cover wildfires in California like you covered snowstorms in Minnesota. I mean, is that like
yeah, and I hate,
I'll
be honest, so the two stories I hate covering more than anything are mass shootings and fires. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's what we've been doing a lot of. So you know.
How long have you been out there?
A little bit more than 4 years.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, that is quite the path. I mean, that alone, and that's not even why we're talking to you, but that alone is like, I mean, the impact is already happening, you guys. I'm just thinking about, first of all, we've got lots of closed doors that happen, that were actually redirecting you in the path that you went in. And every time you got redirected, it sounds like you kind of leveled up, at every single time. It wasn't like I got redirected and I kept going on this nice steady path. It was like, it was like Super Mario Brothers. You got a few more coins every time you hit like the mushroom or whatever.
I think the lesson in that is that it didn't feel that way at the time, right? I didn't know. And I didn't know if coming out here, I didn't know, I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know if I was going to like it, and you just, it's like people have said, just, keep your mind open, just take a deep breath, enjoy the ride. And I feel like things just work themselves out.
How did you make the decision to go?
To go to California?
To go to California. Because I know there was probably questions in there like, do I want to go?
Do I want to buy a car? I mean, yes, there were. It was. I had some really great friends in New York City, and I had been doing anchoring for CBSN, the digital channel, and I thought, well, I've always had anchoring in my background. If I go to LA, I'm probably not going to do a lot of that. And then, during the pandemic, I actually ended up filling in anchoring weekends for 4 or 5 months. So you just never know. But I feel like I just had this gut feeling of just go. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like you go, you hate it. The people in New York love you. You can go back to New York. Yeah. So just try it. If you don't go, I felt like I was going to regret not trying it.
Yeah.
So that's another thing is that I'm a big believer in, I could have stayed in Minneapolis and probably had a really nice life. I was the morning anchor. It's a great market. It's a legacy station. But when they offered me the network job, it was also like, will I regret not doing this? Yeah. And the answer was, yeah, because I'll always wonder what if. Yeah. So I think that's another lesson I try to teach younger people is don't be scared to take the leap because you can always change again, and you can go back to doing something else. But it usually when you make that change and you have a little bit of the fear and you take the jump, it usually does lead to something better down the road.
Yeah. What do you think is worse, failure or regret in your experience?
Regret.
Yeah, I feel that. Trent, what do you think? How do you feel about that?
Regret. Because you never know what, if there's a door open, you don't take the chance, you never know what will happen.
I think not knowing for me is so hard. I'm just one of those people. I like to know everything. So if I don't know what could have happened, it'll drive me nuts. I'd rather know it was bad, so exactly. I kind of feel that way too. So I know you went through a lot of, you mentioned, your divorce and then having people pass away and that is incredible. Just to have all of that going on. And then I know you had a big story that you had to cover that came right on top of that. So take us into that a little bit, because I know this is a part of what impacted you as a person and really what has inspired you to want to impact others and help with the resources on that.
Yeah, so again, it was 2016 and my ex-husband and I had separated, and I got called to travel to Orlando, Florida to cover the Pulse nightclub shooting. And honestly, I had been up in the middle of the night. I couldn't sleep because I was in a bad place. And I flipped on the TV and I'm flipping through, and CNN was the first that I came to that said, there's been a shooting, at least 10 people. Then all of a sudden, 30 minutes later, it was like 20 people. Yeah. And it was very early in the morning, remember? Because it had happened, at the club, at this nightclub overnight. So I called our manager and I said, look, I'm awake. I got my bag packed. And she was like, go. So I got to the airport. I got to Orlando. I had known Florida very well. So I immediately was able, I had friends who had lived in Orlando. I had friends in the market who were working in Orlando. So I was trying to gather information from them, know where to go. And I was when I first got on the ground, I was bouncing between the hospital and the nightclub, going back and forth. And that was so hard because at the hospital, you would see people coming who had obviously been out the night before. They're trying to get to people that they now know are in the hospital and don't know what's happened to them.
Right.
So lots of tears, lots of emotion, obviously. And then over at the nightclub, they didn't know if our anchor was going to be able to make it in enough time to do the show from there. So it was, where's Jamie going to go live if Scott can't make it in? So I went over to the nightclub area, and I remember standing there, and, the networks start putting up big tents and everyone's kind of moving around. And I'm standing there with my producer at the time. And I'm like, what is that? And he's like, it's cell phones. Like, cell phones are ringing. And I'm like, why do we keep hearing these cell phones ringing? And I called a police officer over and I said, why do I keep hearing cell phones? And he said, they're the cell phones on the bodies that are still in the nightclub, and people are trying to get a hold of the people who are there.
Oh.
And I just remember my producer and I looking at each other, and it was like a punch to the gut, right? Because you're like, oh my God. And at that point, we knew there were 50 people who had been killed. And so you think of all, the cell phones just going off all day. And I remember I got back to the hotel. It might have been like the second or third night. So that had happened, and then you get into the storytelling of just the victims and their families. And some of the victims' families didn't know that their sons were gay. And, so there was all these
on top of what they're finding.
Yeah.
Oh
emotion. I remember there was one night we got back to the hotel, and I was not in a good place, and my producer ordered key lime pie because that was going to make it better.
I mean, it doesn't always.
Come on now.
And I'm eating this key lime pie, and I looked at him and I said, when we get back, I'm going to need to talk to someone. And he said, oh, we're all going to need to talk to someone.
Yeah.
And I really think that is what sent me. And I honestly didn't talk to someone right away. They kept offering us mental health services. I remember the president of CBS at the time personally called me, to see if I was okay and what I needed. And I remember I kind of just sat in it for a while. And then it wasn't until just later that year when my stepfather, my aunt, and my grandma died, that all of the trauma kind of came back of covering that and other stories. And when I moved out here, whether it's the sunshine or just that LA is so hippy dippy, or like my boss would give me the time to go talk to someone. I started therapy about 4.5 years ago, and it changed my life. And so I now, with young people, especially, I mentor a lot of younger people who want to be journalists. And I now look back to how I was processing before that year and how I processed since doing therapy. Mm-hmm. And it's like I'm two different people.
Yeah.
Like the core of me is the same, but the processing of feelings and how I move through emotions is so much healthier than it was.
Well, here's my question I have for you. Having gone through a bunch of traumatic things that I've gone through in my life. So in 2019, I actually left a coaching position. I coached out in Colorado. One of my athletes was killed in a pretty horrific accident out on the San Luis Valley, on that really scary road out there. And while I was out of town, and I remember, there wasn't a lot of support for me at the school right after it happened. And I do remember going in and sitting down with the counselor, and she was like, we're offering services. And I sat down with her, and she's like, okay, how are you doing? And I didn't have an answer. I was numb. And then I remember sitting in my apartment and having these days where I just felt like I couldn't function, but I didn't have anything. I couldn't explain it. And then I would go back in front of people, and I would go back into the numb thing. And so I thought, I don't know how to get help for this, because I don't know how to process. And I'm not sure I was actually processing it. So I wonder if you went through kind of that. It was almost like, I feel like I'm supposed to be feeling something different than what I am. So I don't know how to get help for this.
I think it's interesting. I had moments like that. But I also, of course, because this is what you do after divorce, you quickly get into another relationship you shouldn't be in. So I think I was like, I was trying to just run to something else. Do you know what I mean? Like, whether it was a new relationship or moving out here even was kind of running away, right? So there were all these moments where once I finally got still and had to sit in what was happening, I think mine was just movement. Like as long as I just keep going, I don't have to feel anything.
Yeah.
I can keep going to this and this and
And
this.
that's what I did. I went back home and I kept going. They say actually when you get pregnant or when you get divorced, you're not supposed to make any major decisions.
No.
Don't cut your hair. That's
No.
like, those are the rules, right?
Yeah.
Everyone gets pregnant and they're like, I'm going to get a haircut. You're like, no, you're not going to like it.
No, I know. And that's, so I look back and it wasn't until I really started there. I would be alone here and I'm still in the same apartment that I moved into when I first moved to LA. So I would be here by myself and I had a dog. I had to put Dottie to sleep last year, but she was 17. But
Oh, wow.
I had a dog and I would just look at her sometimes and I'd be like, I'm not okay, am I? Like I'd be talking to my dog and my dog be kind of looking at
The
me
dog's
like,
got a notebook. Let me help you.
and I'm like, I don't think you're actually going to help me. So I should probably go talk to somebody. And it was funny because my therapist, pre-COVID used to let me bring her to sessions. So
I mean, I think that's, look, you see Baloo over here. The real Baloo sometimes runs in here and then I have two, but
yeah. And I think it was just, I think I just realized that there were two different paths I could take. I could either keep doing what I was doing and I was going to burn out and I wasn't going to be able to probably do this job anymore and I'd have to figure something out, or I could learn how to deal with the job and then also look to my past and figure out why I did certain things, why I processed certain ways, why I moved from one thing to the next. And I just decided I wanted to be better.
yeah. What did you learn? What did you learn in therapy? You know, I mean, what kind of processing tools?
To feel that it's okay to cry.
Well, and you're in a job where you have to, I mean, people do this in general because they feel like they have to, or that's the way they were raised, but you are literally in a job. You can't be on air and be like, oh, this is a great story, because you're not on, Donahue or whatever. Like, does anyone remember him? But yeah, you're not on Dr. Phil. You're telling the news, so
yeah, I think it's starting to change a little. I think it's interesting because Sarah Seidner from CNN, she and I have talked about this. She broke down on air during COVID and had been in a COVID ward and was begging people to wear a mask because, of what she saw. And I think, I do think society, I don't know if it's social media. People have gotten better just in the last few years anyway about talking about trauma and with feelings and seeking help. And, I think people are more receptive now to news people having feelings. I don't think everybody should have an opinion.
Mhm.
That's why I don't work for a cable network, but I do think you can have feelings about things and it seems a little bit more acceptable than the stiff kind of, I'm telling you the news. And but there are still those moments where you're telling hard stories. I'll tell you, after Jamie Yuccas, which was in Barron, Wisconsin, when she broke free from her kidnapper, that was 2 weeks of really intense coverage, and we did a 48 hours, and it was a lot of work, a lot of hours, and you kept thinking about this poor girl who had been held captive, and that messes with you, right? And you start wondering what happened to her. And I remember coming home and I went to therapy, and then I shut off my electronics and stuff, and I took a deep breath and I decided to drive to the beach. And I drove to the beach and I went for a walk until I cried. And then I was like, okay, I'm good now. And I think it's like learning like the things that work for you and just regulating yourself, not burying everything. Because I think forever I buried and buried and buried and buried until I couldn't, there was no more room for it to go.
Well, no, physically, I think too, you start to feel sick, I
Yeah.
think it kind of manifests in a lot of different ways. And what do you have for, doctors too? I'm thinking of just different jobs where you really are supposed to just have that poker face when you're talking about things, and you do see them break down. And I lived up in northern Jersey for a little while. So I remember when I was a kid driving to my house, and every time we went over the hill to my house, my dad would go, Twin Towers, because we could see them, and I had a lot of friends up there for 9/11. And then I actually lived in DC, and my ex-husband was working with a company that, telecommunications company that had to go in, and they were using these sound waves and things to try to find bodies in the Pentagon. And, just watching all that stuff and seeing seeing people break down on the news, because it just seems like if you have to retell it, so just being in it all the time. So how do you deal with, when you have to cover a news story for a long amount of time? You can't really just, okay, the first night I'm traumatized, I'm going to go home, I'm going to process it, because the next day you're going to go in and have to get back in it.
No, it's a good question because it's different now than how I used to deal with it. Pre-therapy, I would, I'd get very little sleep and I would just run on adrenaline. I'd have coffee in the morning, I'd have a glass of wine to try to put myself to sleep, to go to bed. And you just kind of get in this cycle, where it's like trying to stay awake and trying to go to sleep, where now I really like during the Derek Chauvin trial, which is, I'm doing morning live shots and I'm in the central time zone. So I work on East Coast time. I have to get up at 4 a.m. You do your live hit. You then have to watch court all day, pick, what you're going to do. I'd sometimes have to do interviews for Inside Edition. I'd have to do interviews throughout the day for our digital channel. Then I put together my evening news piece. I go live for evening news. And then usually after evening news, I would have to shoot an interview for the next morning. So you're working from like 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. So, but what I decided, is every morning I had about a 2-hour gap between when I had to do all of my live stuff and then when court started. So I would go for either a walk or a run every morning.
Yeah.
And I was able to kind of clear my head and I'd get back. And then I'd have my coffee. And then I would go into court. And then at 8 o'clock, when I was done, I usually would go back to my hotel room. I would journal a little bit about the day and kind of how I felt and the things I heard. I had a friend tell me, get something that you can do, whether it's an adult coloring book or cross stitch, so I've started cross stitching every once in a while.
Nice.
At night.
Do you show these off at all, or is this like a secret habit?
No, I mean,
did you make a sweater? Did you make yourself a sweater? Or?
I actually screwed up the pattern. I've just restarted. I used to do it when I was a kid and found it very therapeutic. So now I'm like retrying it as an adult, and the pattern's a little screwed up right now. So I'll let you know when I actually finish it.
Okay, all right. We want to see inimitable pillow. Can you make us one of those?
Exactly. But then I'd make sure, and then I'd usually call. I'm dating someone here in LA, so I'd usually call and call in with him. Maybe have a bite to eat with a family member, and then I'd make sure I was in bed by 9:30, so that I was asleep by 10. So I was at least getting an adequate amount of sleep then too. It wasn't perfect, but I feel like too, I realize on some of these stories, taking the time for myself, but also connecting. I know a lot of people in a lot of major cities in this country. Sometimes just having a cup of coffee and being able to talk to someone outside of the news story for a half hour, an hour.
Yeah, kind of off the record download.
Yes. So I've started doing that, and I'm able to kind of then come home, because usually you're away for, a week, 10 days, 14 days. The Chauvin trial, I was gone for a month. Then you come back, and as long as you've kind of done these little self-care items throughout, it's not as big of a dump when you get home, right? It's like, okay, I'm now back. And I once a week, I still did therapy too. It was usually a weekend. And I feel very lucky. I found a therapist who is very flexible with me. So every Friday night I was in Minneapolis, instead of running out to dinner or grabbing drinks right away or going to happy hour, I made sure I did my hour of therapy. And then if I still felt like I wanted to meet up with somebody or go have dinner or have a cocktail, I would do that. But I made sure my Fridays were dedicated to a little bit of processing for me, so that when I got home, it wasn't such a big emotional overload.
Yeah. And I guess that kind of brings to mind two questions I think are really going to help a lot of people. And one of them is, how firm are you with yourself in keeping that schedule and not going, oh, that can bend, because I know that you have a lot of things that come up that are important / urgent / other people count on me. And the other one is really, I know you mentioned running and stuff in the morning. How important is it to you that you're getting your sleep, I know you're on TV, so you have to stay healthy, but, for your mental health, eating right, sleeping, how much is that really helping you?
I've gotten so much better. I feel like, when you first start in this business, you kind of just like grab food where you can, and you're younger, you can eat fast food. You're not really exercising that, but you're just kind of like I said, it's like you're drinking caffeine to stay awake. You're doing whatever you can just to survive. And I think as I've gotten older, I realize like what you put in your body is so important. So I try to eat all natural foods. If I'm on the road, I pick up like, cheese. Just stuff that I know like will sustain me, nuts, that kind of stuff, just to get myself through. So you're not just like grabbing whatever. But like the other thing is I now carry like a reusable water bottle because I need to stay hydrated, right?
Really?
Yeah, exactly. But I never used to do that. I just grab a bottle, I'd have maybe like a bottle or two of water a day and hope that the hotel had a bottle in the room,
That's always my biggest thing when I travel is I feel like if I don't bring my water bottle, I spend the entire time going, I'm so thirsty. I need to get some water. Like, where is the steward? Can you please bring, I'm on the plane. Like, can you bring me 4 of those waters? Because one's not going to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. And for some reason I leave the house. I scavenge like that. I'm like, hey, I'm going to make friends with the flight attendant. Can I have one of those? Because I don't know if people know this, but they do have giant bottles of water on the plane. And they use it
because you work for a little airline company, but I did not know this, and I fly all the time. So spill the tea.
They usually have a few stored. So they usually, in first class, they'll go around and refill with the giant water bottle. So sometimes
they don't do it as much anymore. They're getting a little slow in the first class now.
They're coming back. But I'd always try to make friends with the flight attendant and be like, hey, could I were there any leftover big bottles of water? I forgot my reusable jug. And they're like, oh yeah, hey, yeah, no problem.
That's great.
It pays to be nice sometimes. It does pay to be nice.
It does. I do remember running through the airport frantically for a flight that I was absolutely not going to make, and then realizing I was in the wrong terminal and having to start over again. I think I was crying on the train. It was like my first really bad travel experience. And I got on the plane. I actually made it. I don't know how I made it, but I was the last person on the plane. I am sweating. I have been just busting all over the airport. And I was like, can I have a water bottle? And then she brought me this, and I was like, can I have 5 of those? She came over with an armful and was like, I got you. I'm sitting there drinking up.
Yeah. Well, that's honestly, that goes to another topic, but something that I've since COVID, I feel like we all just need to be a little nicer to each other. Like that, she gave you grace, right? Like she doesn't know that you ran and did all that, but she's like, I got you.
She thought I was really sweaty.
Yeah, right. But I feel like, if more of us were like, hey, I got you. Yeah. No problem. You need that? Sure. But that's one thing on my job I've noticed with having to travel through COVID is just people's fuses are super short. There's not a lot of grace. There's a lot of anger. I know we politically are divided in a lot of ways. And it's just, I just wish there was a little bit more kindness and compassion.
When you get it, isn't it? I almost feel like it's so much more powerful when you see it now and when you have it from somebody. And when somebody shows me grace, it really encourages me to want to pass it on to somebody else. And so you never know, like if you're in a really bad mood, but you decide to give somebody that kindness, you don't know what kind of cascade you're starting, but it could be really powerful. It's kind of like that person that pays it forward at Starbucks and that thing just keeps going, And Trent's in Minneapolis. I know. I'm just wondering what have you seen in Minneapolis? Are you seeing a lot of just short fuses? Are you seeing a lot of like Mr. Rogers? Are you seeing the helpers?
I think it's everyone's a little wound a little tight around here right now with with the latest shooting and all that stuff. And it sometimes it looks foreign when you seeing strangers being nice to each other, because for the past year and a couple months here, it's been so tightly wound in Minneapolis, and to see that kind of grace that people give each other that don't even know each other is really comforting. That there is hope in the world. that little bit of grace can go a long way. Like you said, people pay it forward, and it makes people's days.
I do think therapy gave me that though too, if I'm honest, because I know I'd be wound so tight and I'd have so much going on and I'd be going from stressful situation to stress and not dealing with it, that it does make you just snappier, right? Because you're not learning how to process. And I think once you're able to kind of love yourself and give yourself a little bit of grace, it's way easier with other people, right? Where you're like, okay, that's on them. They're clearly having a bad day. It's not about me, and reminding yourself, not telling yourself a story, not making assumptions, and being able to just kind of sit in it. I've watched people when they're talking to me and they might be all like, are you cut me off? And I just go, I am so sorry. You're right. And they go,
yeah, what are you doing?
It's like foreign to them. They're like, what just happened?
Why is she not fighting me? And it's like, I just don't that's not my thing.
You just hit on, I just think you hit on something really big in that when you don't have that self-love, then you're looking externally to validate yourself. And so if somebody's being angry with you, it's validating your fears that you are not a good enough person or that you have caused whatever the situation is. And I just think that's so important. We don't see that we are actually seeking validation in other people's behavior. And that's where the problem stems from. And that self-love, I think people think I'm not worthy of self-love, so I'm not going to waste my time on that. But if you want to be happy and you want to find joy in life, you have to be able to find that. And that's been a journey that I've been on, and I don't know if we ever get completely to the other side of that journey, but I recognize it. And when you recognize it, that gives you an opportunity to move forward with that. I do want to pull up this picture because I want you to tell me a little bit something. I think we're going to drop this around the 4th of July.
It goes along with what we're talking about too, because I think
perfect.
So pull the picture.
All right, I'm pulling up this. I don't know why I'm so slow on this. I have some really funny pictures. I mean, I've got this one, I don't think that may be any of your relatives, but let's see. Can I just show you, this was Coach Kurt Hines. He was on our last one and they told him they had to wear a suit and tie. So
move the chair, move your chair a little bit.
Oh yeah, he cut it. He's got pant legs.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
And the guy couldn't see, the principal, I think, couldn't see him from the front, so we thought he was naked. He thought he was flashing.
He thought he was completely naked.
I mean, the whole story was we're just very entertained on here. Okay,
so
I'm sorry. That's how it's cutting off. So but that's where we are. All right, tell us about this awesome person and all that.
So I think self-love. Your parents start kind of your self-love journey, right? And my father's a very difficult person. He did the best he could. I've forgiven him. I love both my parents, but he was difficult. And each summer we would go up, as I said, to northern Minnesota, and it was his family. His dad, this is his uncle, Stan. And my dad was the kind of guy that like nothing was ever good enough. If I got an A-, it should have been an A, that kind of thing, which a lot of people have, right? It drove me to be successful. I know that, so I have to be grateful for it too, right? But we would go up to northern Minnesota. My grandfather, his 2 brothers, and a sister all lived around a lagoon. So Uncle Stan was the quietest of all the siblings. He would have us over for movie nights. He always made the best popcorn. When we would arrive, we'd usually arrive on a Friday night. Saturday morning, he'd knock on the back door of my grandfather's house and leave these just delicious, fatty, sugary donuts.
I need this kind of person in my life.
He was great. So he was in the Loon. I think I wrote about Uncle Stan in the Loon Lagoon. But by the time I was 14, my great uncle had a heart attack, and it was 4th of July weekend. My grandfather's birthday is July 5th. It was actually on my grandfather's birthday. And so all the family had been up. I was the only one at 14 who knew CPR because I had done a Red Cross class to be able to babysit. So,
oh yes, I remember that class. Okay. Yep.
So I gave my great uncle Stan CPR for 45 minutes and he died. Oof. And the way the adults in my family reacted was all for their survival. Yeah. And I don't blame any of them because it was traumatic for everyone, but it kind of set me up in this, I'm going to have to take care of myself.
Well, you're 14. That is the hardest age for a female. I don't know about guys because I've been down that road, but I would say for a 14-year-old female. Whew.
But you don't feel like you're good enough. You feel like you failed. You feel, I felt like I had to take care of myself. I felt like no one was there was no emotional safety within the family. Yeah. And I feel like that is the moment that set me up. I had a little chip on my shoulder. Like, I'm going to get out of the house. I'm going to work. I graduated the University of Minnesota in 3 years. I took my first job at 20. I moved to Florida. Like I said, I bought a house by, I think I was like 22 or 23. I got married by 25. I was just going to go, 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 go. I never stopped to check in with myself, never stopped to see if I really was doing what I wanted to be doing, if I loved myself, so I look back and I feel like that was the moment for me that kind of set me on the path well, that's interesting, right? Because it drove me to be very successful, but it also led me to this point that I finally said, okay, I have to deal with what happened at 14, at 20, at 22, and now at, 30, 34. And I'm now, this year, I'll be 39. And I feel like for the first time in my life, I've made peace. I've forgiven. I love myself enough most days to be able to get through. And now to be able to do my job, I used to think I was really good at my job. I now realize there's so much more in listening, and I've learned so much more about, oh, I know where this is going, or I know what this stems to. Rather than talking with people, it's actually listening, taking in the information, processing it, and being able to validate and have a conversation back.
Yeah.
And I just I feel like, we all have things happen in our childhood that you either decide that you're going to process and move forward, or you don't, and you have to deal with it later. At some point, it's going to come back.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful. My mom, there was a couple weeks ago, I said to her, oh, like, why did it take me till 39 to figure all this out? And she went, imagine being almost 65.
That's right. That's right. So, well, first of all, let me just tell you that the reason that you're where you are, this is my total opinion here right now, right? But for the year of 40, which you'll get to, right? When you get up there,
yeah.
It is. I would fear 40. I just turned 43, and I was like, oh, 40. I don't know. That just sounds like a decade I'd like to not get to for a little while. And I pushed it away. But I will tell you, that is the first year where I said, wow, I understand now what every 40-year-old told me, like, just wait, because it's a security, it's an understanding of yourself, it's an ability to journey and do things. You've amassed a certain amount of knowledge in your life that you can apply, and if you are willing to put in the growth time, it will pay off, in huge rewards. And not everybody hits that path, because the being willing to put in that time, that personal growth is the key.
You have to do the work.
Yeah, I mean, and that's huge. But where do you think you would be? And this is obviously total speculation, but if you hadn't gone to therapy, because we're talking about all of us have an impact in our life, and some of them are bigger than others, and they're, very, very different from each other, but we all have some moments. And there's a Duke study that talks about there's an 80% correlation between very successful people, that their worst moment in life and their biggest success. There's that direct correlation in there. And so it's really about what you do with it. And you could have your life kind of could have forked off, in one direction or another. Where do you think you would have gone if you hadn't gone to therapy?
I think about this a lot sometimes. I think I would have continued to repeat really toxic patterns in relationships, both, in intimate relationships, but also within my family. There was a lot of just different dynamics that would play. Like I said, because the household was chaotic as a kid, and difficulties with certain people. And I just don't think I'd be a happy person, or as content and at peace as I am now. I might still be doing this job. I might have tried to figure something else out by now, but I definitely feel like it really boils down to just like the happiness in relationships and friendships. And when you say, growth, I feel like now, I had a lot of toxic people in my life, and I was really bad at boundaries for a long time, because it was just like, I just wanted people and to feel fulfilled somewhere. Right. And then, so you let people walk all over you, or you're codependent, or, and now I'm like very clear, like, to be clear is to be kind. I'm going to, let you know that this is my line. Or when I come back from covering a hard story.
Boundaries, that's a whole nother topic.
Boundaries. When I come back from covering something hard now, I call my boss and I ask for a day or two off. I used to be so scared, like, oh, I'm not going to have any vacation time for the end of the year. And then it's like, I always have way more vacation time than I'll ever use. And I build up all these comp days. And so now it's like, I think just taking care of myself and knowing it's okay. Because no matter what job I had or what relationship I was in, I think it just would have remained chaotic and toxic.
People who haven't gone to therapy or who, because mental health is a big topic, but there are so many people who have literally never gone because of the stigma that's attached to it, or they've gone and they've had a bad experience. So for people who either haven't gone or had a bad experience, is it just going and unloading and talking to somebody? What are you getting? Is it?
Well, I think first of all, it's almost like dating. Like you have to find the right therapist for you. What?
No, you got to find the right one.
You got to find the right one. You really do. And I had one she was very nice. The first 4 or 5 months I lived here, and she was very accessible. That had been a big thing to me with my job and time and flying and traveling. But we just weren't connecting really, where I felt like she heard me and I wasn't really understanding. And when I would try to get more understanding, our communication, there was just something that wasn't clicking.
I love that you say, because I think some people think, well, it doesn't mean someone else said they were a great therapist, but it's not about whether or not they're good or bad. It really is about your chemistry with.
Yeah.
I've had therapists that were really, really nice, and it annoyed me because they're like, oh, that sounds awful. And I'm like, oh, I can't, this isn't.
No. So, I then got a recommendation to somebody else, and she's turned out to be amazing. And I don't know what I'd do without her now, but it took, I tell people like, and I feel like I was lucky to find her as the second one. Right. So I've heard other people, it takes 3, 4, 5 different people, and it's okay. Like, I think people think they go to somebody and they have to keep going. It's like,
you're gonna hurt their feelings if you don't come back. Yeah.
No, it's like, no, just work through that. And so I tell people all the time, it's like dating. And if you click, stick with it. If you don't, move on. And so that to me, I have people in my family who I speak about this all the time, and I talk about, and they see changes in me and they see where I'm at now. And it's like, oh, it's so great. And you seem so much self-aware, and, you just seem happier, and they'll see all these positive things. And then they're like, but I'll never do therapy. Right. Or like, I can read all I need to on the internet, or I've got YouTube. And I'm like, okay. Like, what I tell people, you guys are coaches, right? My therapist to me is a coach. I go to make sure that I'm playing things the right way, or like, maybe I see it this way, but really the play needs to be run that way. And I've played sports my whole life. So I feel like, I try to tell people, like, you don't go to have them tell you what to do, but you go and you have them ask the right questions to know that you're navigating and playing things the right way. Yeah. And I think if people looked at it more like that, instead of like, oh my God, I'm going to go and this person's going to think I'm crazy, and this person's going to see all my deep, dark, I think people just get in their head about it too, where it's like, no, this person should be helping you, and almost coaching you in a way just to be better and see the growth for yourself. And what
almost needs to be a life coach. But I do think a lot of people feel like they have to have a really traumatic event in order to go to therapy, because what else will you talk about? Like you had, I have the nightclub shooting, so I know I need to talk about that, or I had the divorce, I know I need to talk about that. But sometimes you think, well, I don't really have anything traumatic, I just don't feel like me. And so they feel like, well, that's not enough, because I don't know what to talk about, when I go in.
Well, everyone's parents screw up, so you can talk about your
not me, I'm perfect. Trent,
start
right?
there.
Yeah, I think that's a big fear behind a lot of people that don't want to go, and they don't feel like they have that event that's going to drive them in. So they wait until it gets really bad, and then at that point, then you need it like 5 times a week.
Well, and I laugh now because I feel like my group of friends, it's either people who want to grow and be better, and we can call each other out and we can talk about stuff, and all my friends are, for the most part now, people who say, hey, I need to talk to you. I need your attention. Are you in a place to do that? Or I just need a vent. I don't need you to fix. It's like we know this language now too, where the relationships are all better. And I've eliminated a lot of the toxic people. And so every once in a while, when somebody trickles in who hasn't done the work, you're like, like, I don't know if this person can save my life.
I don't have time to work with you.
No.
You know what? I'm pulling this out because, as we're kind of wrapping up here, but that's such a key, just as a tool. And I've pulled this tool too, is do you need a fix, or do you just need to talk? Because that is pivotal in any relationship, like, parent child, or,
here's a hint, men should learn that. because men want to fix everything. And that's, I love you guys. I really, really do. And I appreciate that you want to, but sometimes I got to get there on my own.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, I just want to talk, and the fix can really be like, it's more frustrating, and then they're frustrated because you won't let them fix it, but you're complaining. You're not complaining. Yeah, that's a whole other show. But that is huge to just ask that question. Are you asking me because you want me to fix this, or do you just need to talk? If you need to talk, I'm here, and just go. I think that's really key. So I'm pulling that out because I think people need to hear it. It's going to be tweeted at some point. We'll see. I love that. Well, tell us about, what is the message that you really want, people who are listening to this and relating to it and learning about your story. What do you want them to walk away with if they, maybe feel like, wow, you know what, I think I might.
Well, I feel like I just would love people to know that, even if you have a huge goal, first of all, like when I would say as a young person, I wanted to be a network television correspondent, people would be like, oh, that's cute. Like, if you have a dream, go after it, because you never know what's possible. And even if you're walking into these closed doors, know that one of them is going to open. And when it opens, it's going to make so much sense. So stop banging on the ones that don't open for you and walk toward the one that does, and you'll figure it out.
Don't waste energy on the nose.
It's so there's so many, when we talk about regret, there's so many. If I have any regret, it's that I wasted so much time worrying about things that I never had to worry about.
Yeah, don't waste energy on people that don't like you, that don't want to spend time with you. Don't waste energy on doors that are closed, because that's less energy you can spend on the real stuff that's waiting for you.
Yes. And love yourself enough to figure out what it is you need. Maybe you don't need a therapist, but maybe you need to practice more self-care. Maybe you need to do meditation, whatever it is for you to be a better human. I just feel like we're getting to this place where no one's listening to each other. And I just wish we all wanted to be better humans and be better for each other. So whatever that looks like to you, move toward that. Like all the other stuff, at the end of the day, I always say too, like, I live in LA. There's so many people out here they think that if they have all these Instagram followers, they're going to be special, or if they are on television, they're special, or whatever that may be. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's your family. It's the people who love you, who you love, who you want in your life, whether it's friends or actual family members, or the family you create with your friends. Like, that's people talk about legacy out here. It's always so funny to me. Like, oh, I made it onto the Big Bang Theory. Like, that's going to be my, and it's like, no one's going to remember. Like, I don't even remember half the stories I did last year, and I don't expect any of those people I did the stories on to remember me, as the person who did them. So you have to invest in yourself first. And I think that's what will then make you better, your family better. And if that's better, then we have a better world. And I think that's what we should be striving for.
I love that. I think that's so powerful. And what you need, put out in the world, because it's going to boomerang back. And I saw a really cool meme, and I don't know if it was Gary Vee or somebody put it out, but it was a, old guy laying in bed on his deathbed. He's going, I wish I had more followers, said no one ever. Right.
No. And by the way, be more present. I think that's the other thing, is like that, I work in media. I have to do social media. It's like, when you eat dinner, put this away, talk to people, but people who want to be reporters, it's so funny to me. They'll always ask, how do you find stories? And I go, I know it's a novel concept, but
have you ever watched, obviously you're watching a baseball game on TV. Trent's always watching a baseball game, right? Okay. But they pan through the people in the stands. Every single person, they're either doing this or they're doing this.
Yeah.
That's why they had to put nets up. Because people were getting hit by the ball going like this, and they get hit.
They had like the kiss cam, and the two people didn't even know they were on it.
Well, and you know what? Along those lines, I think people should realize, like, what you're seeing on social media is not, everyone's life looks so perfect. Exactly. I remember when I was going through all kinds of hard stuff, my Instagram looked great. I was traveling all these places. I was covering all these cool stories. People would be like, wow, your life's amazing. Meanwhile, I like on Saturday wouldn't be able to get out of bed because I was exhausted and sad and didn't know how to process stuff. So
and that's another reason for grace. I think, I mean, last year was one of the hardest years of my life. And I had people saying, well, you don't know, your life is so great. And I was like, I'm not advertising what's going on,
Yeah.
But I'm not going to get into a comparison battle, but everybody you see that looks like they're doing great and you're upset, you get upset or grouchy with them and you realize this person is struggling. And I think over the last year, we realized there really isn't anyone who wasn't struggling last year, regardless of what else was going on in their life. And so you can almost just assume,
Yeah. I saw a meme that was like, we're all in the same storm, but different boats.
Different boats. Yep.
And I was like, that's
in our intro, isn't it, Trent?
Yeah, it's a new intro.
That's in our intro video. And that was the point of this podcast. That's exactly why it's here, because we are all in the same storm, especially over the last year. But everybody is navigating it in a different way, and we all have different tools, and we all have different help or no help or whatever it is, and we have different resiliency levels and pain points. So the more people that we can talk to that can share things like this, the more chance that we're going to find something that works for your boat, that's going to help you paddle stronger and get through the storm. But on the other side, we're all getting out of the storm, hopefully together and a little bit stronger. And hopefully we can just share all of the journeys. And like, we just really appreciate you coming on. This is such a powerful topic, very close to my heart. So I hijacked it from Trent tonight, because I know this is something that I've personally,
Poor Trent. Sorry, this is just two girlfriends talking. I don't know.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Trent.
Podcast.
I'm taking notes. Don't worry, I got notes, so we're good. I'm learning.
Trent's got a daughter. He needs to, not that this is a female issue, but we're two females, we're hanging out. So
but on that topic too, so at North we have a mental health coach. We
yes.
stress that for our kids too. That's with all the George Floyd stuff going on and all this stuff over North, we have brought in counselors to talk to kids. And I think introducing to them at a young age, it's okay to talk to someone. We're all human. We all deal with things differently, but to be open about it, especially young men, that's stigma they get men, you're weak if you go talk to someone like that. So
I think it's sexy. You're a dude who
emotions are attractive, people.
Yes.
You know what though, the fact that you guys were able to do that, because I think it's not fair if we don't acknowledge that some people cannot afford mental health. We don't all have insurance, or
true.
It's, even with insurance, it's very expensive. And when you have to pick and choose between rent or food and going to your therapy appointment, that's not an easy choice. And what they did at North to bring in the state therapists, so that they didn't have to go out and find them and pay for them and find out how they're going to get a ride to them. If you're in a position where you're a coach or you're an administrator, or you're a community person, and you can advocate to get therapists, especially when you're in an area like Minneapolis where they're going through so much tension, then I encourage you to go out and do it, because it can be done, because they did it. I watched them do it. So if you have that ability, I would absolutely encourage you, in case that thought hasn't, crossed your mind, or we just forget sometimes how inaccessible that is. And I wish, and I hope that one day our mental health care system is accessible to a lot more people. I hope that's an area that we grow in, because it's really important. And over COVID, it was hard to get in with anybody, because you had to do everything over the phone. You couldn't get a lot of the therapies available. And if you needed to go to the hospital, different story, right?
No, it's a very good point. I think, and I'm glad you said that. I think I've thought about that a lot. What I try to tell younger people is, if you can't afford it, well, I'm not a professional. I have always sought out mentors. Yeah. And I feel like if you can at least find someone who has some of the tools to be able to talk to you or validate where you're at, maybe you can't get into a therapist right away, or it is too expensive. But if you can seek out someone as a mentor, that's a big first step. And there are a lot of us who do want to do that, who see the benefit of it. So sometimes you just got to do the work to find it.
That's like you said earlier, coaches, that's what they are. They're therapists. So, I mean, you go to your coach sometimes when you got something going on at home, you need to get off your chest or need some help you don't want to talk to the team about. So
it speeds up in here. Anything you keep in your head just kind of like, it just collects. It's like fly paper. The longer
Isn't it the worst?
The worst.
You're like, stop, knock, knock.
Yeah, it just grows. And when you let it out, it's kind of like, oh, okay. It's like opening that jar with the vacuum seal. You got to just crack it open sometimes, because your head is going to blow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on here. This is awesome. We got so much great stuff. right, Trent, what did you think of that episode with Jamie? That was incredible.
It was incredible. They had a lot of great information on that. It's a very important topic nowadays. Mental health is very, very serious issue to deal with. And what do you think about it, Kate? What was your feelings on that?
I really appreciated it, and I think that she gave out some great tips people can hopefully use to follow up and helping to find someone to talk to, how to find a mentor, all that great stuff. So glad we got a chance to talk to Jamie today, and I hope you guys can take a look and follow our podcasts on every podcast platform imaginable. I mean, Trent, throw out a couple. Like, where can you listen to this?
iTunes, Google, Spotify, Amazon, just to name a few, but anywhere you look it up, it's on there. You make sure we get it out every Mondays. Episodes come out, so make sure you subscribe, check it off so you get notifications. We're even on YouTube. You can watch the videos on YouTube. So
also, if you don't know where to find us, you probably can't hear this message.
Exactly.
But I think it's good to remind people where they can find us on other platforms in case you have another one. Also, you can find us on Twitter because we are tweeters for sure. You can find Trent over here at Coach Trent Witz, and you can find me at Kate Lavelle. And also, we've got Instagram for Inimitable Impact, so you can take a look at us for there. If you can't find us on YouTube, by the way, that's where our videos are. So you need to see the videos. The
videos are worth the time.
They're worth it. They're worth it. If you can't find it, just search Inimitable Impact. There's no other channel like that because no one else can say it or spell it, including us. So it's all good. Let's take us out, Trent. I think we're good to go. I'm ready to go celebrate. It's a great weekend.
So it's holiday weekend, 4th of July week. Just make sure you guys are being safe out there, and always remember to be inimitable.
All right.
2, 1. Impact.